Hi, and welcome to today's reading from The Jesse Tree by Geraldine McCaughrean and illustrated by B. Wiley. I'm so glad that you've joined us on this journey. Today's chapter is called War and Peace. Was Elijah one of Jesus' ancestors? Mr. Butterfield folded his bottom lip over the top one. It was far too difficult to explain. Well, what about Elisha then? Was he? No. He and Elijah were prophets. Can't you see? They have a separate bough all to themselves. They often appear on Jesse trees. It's traditional. Why? Why are they there? They weren't ancestors of Jesus. The carpenter dropped the little scraping tool he was using to hollow out the raven's eye. It's traditional. I told you. Tradition. But you must know why, insisted the boy. Of course I do. Of course I do. Mr. Butterfield mopped his forehead with a dirty rag. The prophets are there because they knew Jesus was coming. Even hundreds of years before he came, they caught glimpses of him in their dreams. They pictured him in their visions. They promised God's people that a Messiah, someone to save them, someone to help them, really was coming. Someone who could forgive them from all their mistakes and help them make things right again. A descendant of Jesse will appear. That's what the prophet Isaiah told them. A shoot will spring from the stalk of Jesse, and from those roots a bud will blossom. Long before the prophets, Joseph, Moses, and all the people I've told you about trusted God to rescue them. But the prophets knew something. Joseph and Moses didn't. God told them he would send them someone to help them, a Messiah. Someone to fight off their worst giants? Someone to guide them back to the Paradise Garden. So where are the prophets? Show me. Mr. Butterfield pointed out a row of symbols dangling from one bough of his oaken Jesse tree. Here, look. Here's one of the ravens that fed Elijah in the desert. Here's Nehemiah's trowel. He encouraged the Israelites to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem after they were destroyed. And here's a plow for Isaiah. Was he a farmer then? I told you, weren't you listening? He was a prophet. I thought prophesying might be a part-time job. Why a plow? Because he said there would be a time, one day, when there would be no more war, and people would hammer their swords and blades into their plows. Imagine peace, blessed peace. Mr. Butterfield said it wistfully. His head was spinning. Next, I'll carve a bear here to represent Elisha. Ooh, a bear. Why a bear? Tell me about the bear. The questions buzzed like hornets round Mr. Butterfield's head. Because a crowd of good-for-nothing small boys waylaid him and jeered him and called him names and chanted, Go on, Baldy, go on, Baldy. And they mocked him and pestered him until he couldn't stand it anymore. And so he cursed them black and blue. And 2 she-bears came rampaging out of the woods and ate them all up. Now will you let me get back to work? The boy bolted. A moment later, the carpenter stared after him, swaying. Started after him, swaying unsteadily from foot to foot, arms upraised, looking like a charging bear. Stop! Wait! Clang! The metal latch of the door clacked shut. He banged up against the baptismal font, making the water slop. Then he steadied himself, opened the latch, but the street was already empty. Wearily, he slumped down on a big oaken chest by the door. I'll bet Elisha regretted his temper, he said under his breath. I know I do. The bear that he carved that day was not very fierce at all. In fact, it wore an anxious sort of smile and stood up on its hind legs, stretching its neck for all the world as if watching out for a long-awaited friend.